Hi, everybody. It's, what is today? October 23rd, 2019. And I'm Steve Hodgden, and this is Nick Curry. We're with Modern Asset Management, and we host these once a month to go over deals, see what's going on, try to spur some dialogue among fellow investors. And tonight we're going to talk about a project we've talked about a couple of times over the last year and a half, and review how it wrapped up. It was a spec build in Bel Air, Los Angeles, and well, anyway.
Still the video up.
Yeah, so
speaks for itself.
Yeah, let's go do that. And share.
So for anyone that's been on this before, this will definitely jog their memory.
So this is about 4 minutes. This is on the ridge above Los Angeles, looking out to the valley, into the ocean, the distance. That's the builder. Those are the realtors.
One of many realtors that were recycled throughout the course of the project. Fortunately. Am I jumping early into your PowerPoint slide to ask how you found this project? Should we start from the beginning?
Yeah, while they're doing that, I can talk about, how did I come to get involved in this? I went to a Southern California RIA meeting, and it was hosted by some folks in an IRA custodial company. And a couple of fellows came in and pitched that they worked with Paradigm Funding, which was a syndicator of deals, and they said they had a spec build in that was going to be like a $7 or $8 million project, and I went out to Temecula and went through a presentation. Went out to Temecula and went through a presentation that convinced me that. Did I just wipe out the picture? Oh, sharing. I'm sorry. Hang on. No, there we go. Just a little bit. We made an initial investment and then a couple of more in this project, and went to a pretty expensive seminar over a 3-year period. I was I'll talk in the slides, but I was enamored with the promised return of a 50-50 upside with a minimum 20% annual return. So there's sometimes when you put together a deal, you need to not believe need not to believe the salesman. Right? Oh, look at this. This place is just beautiful, though, right?
Pretty nice. Well, we're here because at last project has sold.
Mm-hmm.
But we're mad.
Yeah, and that's the deal. I'm mad again. I'm always mad. So I'll stop the share. Start with the. Oh, I guess I have to go find the new PowerPoint. Hold, please. All right, we got the PowerPoint. We'll take it from the top. So here we are. We did a deal, and we had a big payday Friday before last, and so here's probably something I need to talk to a therapist about. We netted $85,000 on this deal in one day, and I'm not happy. So, and so I subtitled it, How a Spec Build Took Too Long, Cost Too Much, Why Picking the Right Partners Matter, and that may apply to people picking me as a partner too, and why I should have focused more on downside risks and less on falling in love with a promised yield of a 20% return. It was a ride. So this house sold at the beginning of the month for $7,125,000. Started more than 3 years ago. It started out right at the beginning, delays for permitting and other things that could have been taken care of ahead of time. He wasn't quite lined up ready to go when it started. But there used to be a lovely 1960s house, single story, Mediterranean style that they bulldozed and put this up. As you can see, they filled every square inch of the lot. It's 6,000 square feet, and it was, he built a beautiful product. So what happened is they tore down the house that was there. The builder borrowed $3.5 million from Anchor Loans for a first trustee. The syndicator assembled an investment group. There were 10 of us, and we collectively put in $1.2 million. The syndicator earned 10 points, I believe, on that 1.2 million. We put in $200,000. The law firm Garachi in Irvine did just beautiful work. I've never seen a more thorough set of loan docs and covenants and restrictions. We were promised 50% of the upside, which at that time was something like a $2 million profit, because we believed it, or 20% interest, annual interest. So it was kind of like, well, what could go wrong? It was also my first foray into purely passive investing. And as you'll see in a couple more slides, I couldn't help myself. We had to do what we do. First thing that went wrong is, like I said, we started in June of 16, didn't really get moving until maybe October after some permitting objections were overcome. And then here we are in September 17. The market has changed. When we started, this was like one of two houses on the ridge that were being constructed. By a year later, there were a dozen projects. And the builder convinced us, we believed absolutely, that putting a rooftop deck and an elevator were the things to keep up with the neighbors. The view from up there, just spectacular. It's just amazing. So they had a $277,000 cash call. We put in $77,000. Most of the other investors put in some. And so now we have to start paying attention to debt service. The first 11% loan on $3 million, and that was clicking along at $35,000 a month. So it's starting to chew into equity in this deal, right? And then we come next spring, and the house is on the market, and I think we're just about on it was right around then it came on the market. Loan extensions at Anchor are now happening every quarter, and they're carrying a point, or later it was negotiated, I think, to a half a point. But they're carrying a point, and the interest is still clicking at 11% a month, a year. Carry costs now, interest, taxes, and insurance are running about $45,000 a month.
I think the original loan documents called for the balloon to be due at the end of 2017 as well, if I remember
It was
right.
January 1. Yeah, the loan balloon, January 1, 2018.
Now we're 2 years into it, so
Yeah.
a couple of slides in 2 years. It just seems like it went fast, but that was a long time.
And think about $35,000 to $45,000 a month going out the door to support the construction loan. We're just wrapping up another project in Gulf Breeze, Florida, that's clicking along $2,400 a month, and that makes me crazy. So you imagine how I felt with this amount of money going out. So we had the appraisal, we had comps based on square footage that I was comfortable in the 7.2, 7.5 price range that I thought that there was a market for it. The seller, the builder, was going for the home run, and he put it on the market at 7.9. At this point, he needs money because he can't service the obligation. He needs a little money to finish some things, and it's getting really scary. So what did we do? We wrote a third for 300 grand, but we wrote it at 10% a month with the intent that it was going to be a short term, 60, 90 days, get this thing done and sold. When you add in the interest costs and the principal, the break-even point was about $5.8 million. And so there was still belief that there was a substantial amount of equity. But again, the equity is vanishing at 40 grand a month. We liked this project so much then, we even brought out another investor's $100,000 position. And when we go in, we go in.
Almost $1 million in, and largest stake behind the first lien lender, getting 36% on a good piece of that, the blended rate, because of this 20% preferred return, which plays out in the next few slides. But the on market for 7.9, and I think the realtor that was brought on had sold the highest dollar listings in LA. Steve, if you go to the next slide, I think that marketing teaser is in there. April 2018. Forbes, Fortune, Golf Digest. Let's put all these big names on here. Looks pretty impressive, doesn't it? This is what you get when you list a $7 million house. So,
well, and that company sells a lot of real estate, but the same thing goes. It's got to be priced right.
And there were offers, I think, that they brought that were low sixes or 6.5 at the time, and they were turned down. That was the developer's call. They weren't our decision. But that was a year.
And a year comes and goes, and again to the tune of $400,000 in interest to two anchor loans, right? So we're coming to February of 19, so now we're 2 years in, and loan extensions are continuing. We had a hard stop in the high-end market. Nothing was selling that winter over $5 million. I mean, literally nothing. Builder put a tenant with an option to buy in to put a $30,000 a month renter in there. Okay? But the builder wouldn't drop the price, and that's the point where I'm looking. My experience is on lower and mid-level houses. I have less than $1 million. It's been where I've been. I've done a couple of larger commercial deals, but they price on NOI, so there's no, it's just numbers. He starts talking about a refinance. Won't lower the price, because if he drops his price, then his loan to value goes out the window. He still has north of $7 million, and they're just nothing current. I got, well, we Nick probably got tired of hearing me yell about this. And again, the only one that was winning at this point is the first lender. So because we had a third that we controlled ourselves, we didn't need consensus from the group, the rest of the group of investors who were split on whether they still believed in the product or whether they were scared. So we foreclosed from our third position because we had control, and that's one of the takeaways. Is with the exception of Nick and Eric, I'm probably not a great team guy. I just like things the way I like things, I think. So the builder starts working on a refi. The lender who did that deal is just she's amazing. And so he can't make the payments to us. He's behind on taxes. There's no market. So off we go and we file a notice of default. And this is the back of the house, by the way. This is just, it's Disneyland for grown-ups, So an amazing one.
March of this year.
Yeah. So 7 months ago. Carrie Passmore brings 5 Arch to the table, and 5 Arch is a competitor of Anchor. And because the house is finished, the equity is worth a lot more than when it was in construction. So they lend 5.6 on it, and that 5.6 gets us paid in full. It gets all the principal back to the. At this point, we're completing the whole process. Gets all the principal back to the 10 investors, or now 9 because we bought one, and we negotiated a payout with a new second for half of the interest. When we looked at the numbers and to try to figure out what the breaking point was, if the developer didn't have a chance to get something into his pocket, there was no incentive for him to cooperate. So we put together a deal that the faster he sold, the deeper his discount on his interest. And we wound up over the 6-7 months that it took to get to here, that he paid a lump sum interest payment to the group of $321,000. So all this money goes out to Anchor, and then $50,000 a month out to 5 Arch, and then $321,000 on the second. Plus, he has to repay back that high interest 36% third. And
I think a $100,000 broker fee on that 5.6 million as well.
Oh, that's right. There was a $100,000 broker fee, right? $100,000. But frankly, I didn't think it was possible when she did it. So, so of the 321, we got 85, and we got our second paid off. I'm sorry, and we got our third paid off. The learning lesson for me there is when we put in the third, we should have foreclosed. We should have forced the hand right then and just let it fall where it may at a distressed price. All we did was manufacture $50,000 a month to an investment bank, and that didn't help it.
So the original second, that was a 50-50 profit split, attractive return. The 85,000 is made on that, and that was 3 years.
Yeah, well, if we had, and I have to try to say this in a way that isn't patting myself on the back. Because first, I want to say we should have played hardball nearly, but instead we tripled people down. In an investment group, it's sometimes hard to get consensus, and not all the investors have the right level or different kinds of experience. Nick and I come from the distressed debt, accounts receivable world. I ran a collection agency for 18 years and have Nick and I have bought and sold lots of distressed, ugly paper. And I forgot that I was the most experienced collector in the group. So when I look at teams going forward, I have to look at what people bring besides money. Because I sure could have used a big time contractor on this team. I sure could have used an accountant to manage this guy's numbers, and I sure could have used a realtor in my pocket that had listings that had buyers already. We're in another one of this builder's projects. We've been in there for now coming up on a year and a half, maybe coming up on 2 years. And we're hoping that we've all learned a lesson, and I certainly have. That we're not gonna and he knows that we're not gonna move around. Oh my goodness, it's a spreadsheet of numbers. What did you do?
Came in tiny. For those with a big monitor, this was actually, I was able to go back and find all the construction expenses month over month, and the interest carry. So it ended up being a 40-month project if you really look at it, from June 2016 when it started to August 2019 when you exited. At 33 months, there was the principal repayment to the second. There was blood in the water until months between months 33 and 23, but that was where most of the story takes place. And so the 6.2, 6.3, $6.4 million offer that was on the table back in March, April, May 2018. Could the builder have walked away with more money at the end of the day than $200,000? That's essentially at the bottom right corner in really small type. What the developer took home after 3 years of having this be his full-time job. So that was 40 months of not only full-time job but reputation and a lot of ups and downs, and one hell of a story to tell.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, the lessons learned. Didn't do enough contingency planning. Better investigation of the partners and the syndicator. Make sure with people that have sufficient specific track history.
Let me add to that, Steve. Someone also, when there's the syndicator and there are 10 people in a group, who's the leader? Is it the syndicator, or did they make their money and they're out? Do they have interest in seeing the project through timely? The 1.4 million that was due, nobody called it due for 6-7 months until someone found in the paperwork that 1.4 million was due back then. So they had the ability to act, but there was 10 people in the syndicate and nobody really I'm the responsible party. So it definitely needed a chief, and that's where we came in.
And it took us a little bit to understand that, right? Again, I had this thing in my head that this was my foray into passive, and I was going to be passive, and I think that, well, it cost us some money, and cost the builder a lot of money too. Never change the scope of work. Right? That was such a bad idea. That delayed the project 6 months at least. Putting in the elevator in the rooftop deck required new engineering in the building. It was bad news. Again, the end result though was just spectacular. Understand the timing. I thought that permits were in hand. Permits were not in hand, and it took him. He had a verbal, but he didn't have stamped permits ready to go. And know yourself. I'm just not built to sit back and let things happen. So I'm in a couple of other deals like this, and 3 others that are long-term holds, and it makes a lot more sense to me. It's just money in an apartment complex, REIT, things like that. The last was aligned goals. We got at odds pretty quickly. As soon as I started to make some noise, as soon as we started to challenge things, the developer, started talking about how we were partners and he was in charge and all that stuff, and that wasn't the case. We were so that the house sold for $800,000 more than an offer I wanted him to take. So clearly, I can't price this kind of asset. So I probably shouldn't be in this market. I can price a shopping center, an apartment building, or a regular single family house, but I had no idea what these things were.
And one comment on that, Steve. I think that's one of the biggest takeaways I learned was in specialty high-end housing like this, where in this market, this is a $1 million house. It sold for $1,300 a square foot. Are there any other markets like that? Very few. The comps are just so hard to say that they're comparable. It's a house that was built in this year, and if you go look at the lot size, it's completely different, or the style's completely different, or it was bought by a family that was doing the development. There were all these scenarios of these comps that fed into this pre-construction appraisal of over $8 million. And so, $5 million in, 5.5, getting up to 6, think you're okay. The comps were not real. The closest comp was a property that was next door that actually looked like it was built with the same plans that finished a little bit before. But I look at this as art, and it's not a need, it's a want. So who are creating this art for? Who is your target market? Because everybody needs a roof over their head. Real estate is safe, but at the high end, it's not necessary. It's a want, not a need.
Yeah.
And where's your safety?
Yeah, and even renting it at $30,000 a month wasn't break even.
Was not.
So that was that.
So the 85,000 is a 6.7% annualized return over 40 months, and we would have put that money to work and made well over double digits. So what did this cost us? And 6.7 less all the time and stress and feuds.
Yeah. So and countless hours of your time babysitting the developer and trying to make sure that he was on the straight and narrow. It was just beautiful project, a success for all, but nowhere near what was anticipated, promised, or expected. And it's it was said recently that in these kind of builds, the one who loses is the investor, not the builder, right? Because they're typically getting paid all the way along. He didn't in this case. He banked everything on the finish line. I don't know how much the 200 he actually got to keep, but I'm sure he had other bills that were due for stuff. But it was, he certainly didn't ignore the project. It wasn't on the back burner at any step of the way. Would I do this again? No. Would I do an investment in a group again? Absolutely. As long as we know, who does what, and we agree on contingencies when things go wrong. I've the Probably the biggest thing that I'm mad about is we were just too passive. It took too long for me to get mad. So anyway, so that's an explanation of 1200 Linda Flora in Los Angeles, California. So that's this evening's work. And take questions if anybody's got a quick something they want to put up in the chat box. Other than that, I'm going to stop the recording and say goodnight.
All right.
All right. Okay.
Good night, everybody.
All right. Thanks, folks. All right. See you next month. Bye-bye.